Where exactly was the ancient kingdom? This place was home to a highly advanced civilization, but because of their incredible technology, it's believed that a group of jealous nations joined forces to tear them down and steal their resources. Not long ago, I told you the true name of this grand kingdom, a name completely erased by the world government. But today, you're also going to find out where it might have been located 900 years ago. Do we already know this place? Let's find out. There are a few different places where the ancient kingdom could have been. So I'm going to lay all my cards on the table, break down the clues and arguments for each one, and save the most complex option for last. This final theory is highly detailed, makes perfect sense, and will definitely surprise you. So let's start with the simple ones. Option number 1. A sunken island. This is the simplest option of them all. Now that we know the sea level rose by 200 meters after the void century, it's highly likely that the island where the ancient kingdom stood was completely submerged. So at this point, it doesn't really matter where exactly it used to be on the map, because there is absolutely nothing left on the surface. Option number 2. Laughtale Island is not my absolute favorite theory, but I think it's important to keep it in mind. Roya said he discovered the entire truth about the existence of the ancient kingdom and the poneglyphs on that mysterious island, so that could simply be because the actual ruins of the ancient kingdom are located right there, plain and simple. Option number 3. It was everywhere. The ancient kingdom wasn't just limited to one single spot. I believe it was actually a union of all races. That's why we see so many different islands allied with them, like Guano, Elbaf, Shandora, and many others. However, it only makes sense that they had a capital city, which is exactly what we are trying to locate on the map. But what if the capital city wasn't fixed in one place? What if it was actually a wandering fleet traveling the world, kind of like Jerma 66? The people of the half moon, mentioned in the sacred mural of Elbaf, could be a direct reference to those living on the ships, distinguishing them from the people of the moon, since these vessels are shaped just like a crescent. It's a wilder theory, but it's definitely worth talking about. Option number 4. Right under Marijoa. The 20 kingdoms, or rather the 19 that won the war against the ancient kingdom, formed the world government and settled right on top of the red line. We already have confirmation that before this happened, the Lunarian tribe, known for their ability to ignite and control fire, lived on top of that very same wall. It's highly likely this race was a core member of that advanced civilization. Their ability to produce fire surely played a massive role in their technological breakthroughs. So the fact that the world government placed their own justice on top of the losers might actually be literal. They defeated the ancient kingdom and built the foundations of Marijoa right over them, burying history under the red line. However, there is another clue that has flown completely under the radar. During the Egghead arc, we were told that 200 years ago, the Giant Robot Emeth attacked this city. The Straw Hats questioned how the robot could suddenly appear there. Did it actually climb the red line? Right at that moment, we got a highly suspicious comment from Robin. She mentioned that it had also been 200 years since the Treaty of Non-Discrimination toward Fishmen was signed. This comment seemed entirely out of place. Why would Oda do this? What is the connection between Emeth showing up in Marijoa and the fact that the Fishman Non-Discrimination Treaty was signed the exact same year? I can assure you that if Oda gave us that specific detail, it is because one thing is directly connected to the other. And in fact, it helps explain exactly how Emeth managed to activate. Emeth did not climb the red line. He was already under Marijoa, buried in the rubble of an ancient battle, perhaps fighting to defend the ancient kingdom. But why did he activate 600 years after the Void Century war ended? According to Vegapunk, that robot ran on an ancient energy source that they still haven't been able to figure out. However, the moment Luffy activated his Year 5th, Emeth opened his eyes and was able to move. And what defines Luffy when he uses his Nika form? The fact that he can't stop laughing. Smiles and joy have always been the key to One Piece. Luffy is the new Joy Boy. Now is when the signing of that Fishman non-discrimination treaty 200 years ago finally starts making sense. When that happened, the entire Fishman Island started celebrating with smiles and pure joy. All of that energy was what actually woke Emeth up and powered him, since he casually happened to be right above them, buried in the rubble of the battle to defend the ancient kingdom. Everything fits perfectly. Why else would Oda remind us of the non-discrimination treaty right when they mention Emeth attacking Marijoa? If we think like the author, it's clearly a clue. Emeth woke up thanks to the energy released by all the joy and smiles of the Fishman Island citizens when they heard the news about the treaty. And this also helps us understand that Luffy in his Nika form projects a joyful energy equivalent to that of an entire island. Ultimately, if Emeth woke up 200 years ago from the ruins of the war, it only makes sense that he fell while defending his kingdom, which means he was located in the ancient kingdom itself. Marijoa simply wasn't there before. Option number 5. Enies Lobby. This is actually the place where I first imagined the ancient kingdom would be located. Back then, we hadn't yet seen an ancient weapon wipe out Lulusia and leave a massive identical hole behind. But the one detail that always made me suspicious was the fact that it is always daytime in Enies Lobby. Something truly strange is happening there for sunlight to reach that place constantly. Realistically speaking, during the night, the sun is on the other side of the planet. Therefore, there must be another light source making it possible for Enies Lobby to remain in perpetual daylight. My theory has always been that there was an artificial sun right above it. And now that the theme of the sun god has become so central, and even Vegapunk himself has mentioned the goal of creating a sun, it all makes perfect sense. It is highly possible that the ancient kingdom, thanks to the highly advanced technology Vegapunk is trying to replicate, managed to create a sun right above themselves. And to this day, it is still there. On top of that, the existence of that giant hole, exactly like the one left by the weapon that destroyed Lucia, strongly implies that the very same weapon was used there 800 years ago to completely erase the island. So putting these two facts together, that there was a sun created by the ancient kingdom's technology and that the island was literally wiped off the map, everything points to this being the original location of the ancient kingdom. Furthermore, we can also use the argument of justice. Enies Lobby is known as the Island of Justice, heavily implying that this is the exact place where the enemy was judged, and the world's government's justice was forcefully imposed upon them, meaning right on top of the ancient kingdom. Option number 6. This is the last and most interesting one, the one I truly wanted to share with you in this video. It is a combination of several theories that you have probably already heard separately at some point, in different forums and videos. But when you put them together and give them a unique twist, we can reach a brand new conclusion. I remember a long time ago, I noticed that more casual One Piece fans, the ones who don't overanalyze every single mystery in this anime, just took for granted that the final island, where the One Piece is located, would also be the island of the ancient kingdom. They were two mysterious yet deeply connected places, so it was logical to assume at first that they were the exact same thing. A single conclusion for the end of the story, including two different locations for the greatest mystery in One Piece, felt more complex, and it wasn't the first thing anyone would think of. However, As people began to dive deeper into the mysteries of the Void Century, everyone started to realize that this claim didn't make much sense. If the ancient kingdom fell because of the world government, it couldn't make sense for it to be Laughtale. If it were, the government could have taken the treasure hidden there. Not to mention they would have erased the island or built right on top of it. Over the last few years, this has become the standard view, and the mindset of the general audience has shifted. Now, we all think it's obvious that the ancient kingdom and Laughtale are two completely different places. But I have already learned my lesson in One Piece. When something seems obvious, it is highly likely that Oda is about to troll you. There actually is a way to justify the ancient kingdom and Laughtale being the exact same place. Personally, I believe Oda's true intention is for everything to converge into one single piece. The place where the One Piece is hidden is the very place where everything will happen, and where everything has already happened. It is the convergence point of every single mystery. As I've mentioned in other videos, I believe Laughtale is where the final war will take place. At the beginning of the story, the obvious thing to think was that only one crew would manage to get there, the winner. But remember what I said before, the obvious doesn't surprise us. The obvious is predictable, and Oda needs to surprise his audience. That's why I'm absolutely sure that the final battle will break out right on Laughtale. And only after Luffy proclaims himself the winner will we finally discover what the One Piece truly is and learn the real history of the Void Century. This time things will be different. All 4 emperors will reach that island, and in one way or another, the world government will too. That is where the war that brings down the ultimate enemy, the world government, will be fought. There is a very simple reflection that leads to this conclusion. The One Piece is a treasure whose meaning we will never understand unless we know this history of the Void Century and get a flashback that ends with Joy Boy leaving the treasure behind. But at the same time, learning the history of the Void Century means uncovering the darkest secrets of the world government. It means finding out what Imu did to force Joy Boy to hide his treasure so far out of their reach. That means, during the Void Century flashback, we will see both Joy Boy and Imu. And that implies that while we are watching that flashback, the final war must already be taking place. Once the Void Century flashback ends, we will instantly have the information needed to understand what the One Piece is in the very next panel. It can't be the other way around. We can't just see the One Piece and think it's a completely pointless object because we don't understand its meaning yet. The obvious path, and what everyone thinks will happen, is that Luffy finds the One Piece first and then goes on to defeat the government. But in One Piece, the obvious is never what happens. Everything will unfold in the exact same place. Luffy will win, proclaim himself the king of the pirates, and claim the One Piece. At the same time, the world government will be defeated. And like I said before, if Oda's intention is for everything to converge in one single spot, the Laughtale would also have to be the island where the ancient kingdom used to stand. This could give the island so much more significance. It couldn't just be some deserted island where a guy left a chest behind. We would see small hints, tiny clues of what that place used to be. And during the flashback, we would get the ultimate confirmation. We would see how drastically everything changed. In the past, it was a massive grand city. In the present, nothing but ruins. All of this sounds beautiful, but it won't convince anyone who is still thinking about the contradiction. Why couldn't the world government keep the treasure after winning the war? Joy Boy was supposed to have traveled to a different place to hide that treasure. But don't worry, because there is an explanation that solves this contradiction once and for all. The ancient kingdom wasn't always there. Let me explain. There is a theory by the famous Japanese YouTuber Zoan, which states that Laughtale is located in the left eye of the skull that forms the island of Jaya. I'm going to completely flip this theory on its head and argue that this missing piece wouldn't be Laughtale but the ancient kingdom itself. This gives the theory a brand new meaning. Many of you might not be familiar with this theory, so let me break it down briefly. Jaya doesn't look like a skull today. However, during the Straw Hat's adventures in Skypia, we discovered that 400 years ago, the island of Jaya did form the shape of a perfect skull. But then, a massive knockout stream launched half of the island into the sky, leaving it stuck up in Skypia. Because of that, Jaya only retains the jaw of the skull down in the Blue Sea today. The upper part of the skull includes both eyes. In one of them, specifically the right eye from the skull's perspective, is where Shandora is located. This place was inhabited by the Shandia 400 years ago, whose descendants we met during the Skypia arc. However, even back then, the left eye was already hollow. It was just an empty hole. We saw a map from 400 years ago, when Jaya was still entirely in the Blue Sea, and the left eye was already missing. According to that famous theory, that missing piece is Laughtale. But the extra conclusion I've reached is that if we go another 400 years back in time, straight into the 4th century, there was actually another city in the left eye, and it was also turned away from the island. It would be a perfect parallel to Shandora in the right eye. The city located in the left eye was the capital of the ancient kingdom. This makes perfect sense when you realize that their neighbors, the Shandia, were still protecting the Golden Bell and inscription 400 years later. The Golden Bell was considered the light of Shandora, a beacon of sorts to tell the world we're here using sound instead of light. It fits perfectly that the island home to the ancient kingdom would have something like that. They consider themselves the epicenter of civilization. Furthermore, the ruins of Shandora are the only place in the entire world where we have seen the ancient language carved directly onto walls. Everything else has been found on poneglyphs scattered across the globe. The clue supporting the theory that the skull's left eye hides a major secret can actually be found on several manga volume covers. Oda has especially drawn multiple covers where a character has their left eye closed or hidden, and it just so happens that those specific volumes always contain massive references to the Void Century. The most blatant one features Luffy during the Skype arc itself, but we also have others with Nami or Robin. On top of that, it has been widely discussed within the fandom that the scars of incredibly important characters like Luffy, Garp, Shanks or Zoro are always on their left eyes. Even Dragon's tattoo is on the left side of his face. It could be a coincidence, or it could be a deliberate clue. The thing is, beyond these visual clues, it makes perfect narrative sense for the capital of the ancient kingdom to be located in the left eye, especially considering that 400 years after it vanishes, the exact same thing happened to Shandora in the right eye. To make it even more poetic, I dare to say that each eye disappeared in a completely opposite direction. The right one went up and the left one went down. However, in the case of the left eye, it was completely intentional. When the ancient kingdom realized they were going to lose against the 20 kingdoms, they used a method to hide their capital somewhere else. They did this so the enemy couldn't steal what they were protecting, and to ensure the truth remained safe in another corner of the world. This perfectly aligns with Laughtale being the place where you uncover the truth of the Void Century alongside the One Piece treasure, because that is where Robin will read the final inscription of the city. But how could we separate a piece of an island and move it to somewhere else? Well, we could connect this to the whale theory. This theory suggests that Laughtale is inside a giant whale like Laboon, since coincidentally, the official name of this species is silent whale. Perhaps during the Void Century, there was a massive specimen as huge as the island-eater fish we saw at the end of Little Garden. The citizens of the ancient kingdom somehow managed to have this whale swallow that piece of land and carry it far away. In this scenario, the island wouldn't still be inside the whale today. Instead, the whale would have spat it out later in a remote location unknown to the world government. Joy Boy was simply a pirate who managed to find that hidden island and leave his treasure there. Since it's not a natural island, but rather a chunk of earth torn away from a completely different landmass, it perfectly explains why no logpost can target it. Furthermore, the explanation finally resolves the contradiction. It makes perfect sense for Laughtale to be the ancient kingdom itself, and explains why the world government has no idea where it is, despite winning the war during the void century. Even though we don't have a mountain of clues for this hypothesis, it fits the plot beautifully. It justifies how the final island can be both the ancient kingdom and Laughtale at the same time, the origin and the end of everything, the place where all mysteries unite into one single piece. And that's it for today's theory. By the way, if you're still here, thanks for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our growing community of theorists. Your support is what keeps this channel going. But before you go, I want to know your thoughts. Which of all these options you've just heard convinced you the most? Or if you have an even better theory, I'd absolutely thrilled to hear it down in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.